We learn the Chok Yisrael for Parshas Mishpotim, Yom Revi, day 4. So the Torah says, "V'goynev ish u'mecharai," if you kidnap a person and sell him, v'nimtza biyadai, and witnesses saw that the kidnapped person was in the kidnapper's hand before he sold him, then most yumas, the kidnapper is put to death. Udiyignav nafshem ibnei Yisrael v'zabanine v'yishtakach b'yadei isketala yisketel. Says Rashi, v'goynev ish u'mecharai, lama nemar. Why do we need this pasuk? Lefisha nemar, it says in Devarim, ki matzei ish goynev nefesh me'echav, when you find a person kidnapping a nefesh, ein li ela isha ganav nefesh. We only know a man. Isha tumtumo androgynous, a woman or one whose genitals were covered over with a skin, or one who has simani ish and isha sheganvu, if they kidnapped minayin. Talmud Leimer v'gunav ish u'mecharai v'goynev ish u'mecharai, if he kidnaps a man, anyone. Well, if ish nemar goynev ish, kidnapping a man, ain't li ela goynev ish, I only know a man. Goynev isha minayin, how do I know if you kidnap a woman? That's why it says in Devarim, Talmud Leimer, goynev nefesh, any soul, l'kachut tzruchu shneim. That's why it has to say both psukim, the one here and the one in Devarim. What's missing by one is revealed by the other. The pasuk says, obviously it couldn't be at the end that it's found in his hand, because he had to sell it. But it means the witnesses found it in his hand and then testified u'mecharai, and he sold it. And therefore, it means that they found it in his hand kfar koydem mechira, before he sold it. Mois yumas, he's put to death b'chenek, with strangulation. Kol misa amur b'Torah stam, without any further details like dam of bay, etc. Cheneki, it's considered strangulation. V'hifzika inyan, when the Torah interrupts between Makkah ish and Makkah of v'imai and Mekalal of v'imai, the pasuk says the hifzika inyan v'kasa v'gaynev ish bein Makkah of v'imai lemekalal of v'imai, between hitting a father or mother and a cursing a father or mother. V'nirali hainu plukta. That's the argument in Sanhedrin. The Mar Savar, one holds Makshina Nakal Leklala, that we compare hitting to cursing, and that we're not chayiv for hitting a father if he doesn't keep the Torah. Mar Savar loy Makshinan, and one holds that we don't make a hekesh, and it's only by cursing that it's potter if he doesn't keep the Torah, but by hitting you're chayiv, because the case of kidnapping interrupts in between. Umekalal aviv imai, one who curses his father and mother, mois yumas, is put to death. Udiyelet avui v'imai isketali yisketel. Says Rashi, Mekal aviv ima lama nemar lefishu aimer ish asher yikala les aviv, a man who curses his father. Ein liela isha kila les aviv, isha shekila kilala es aviyah minayin. How do we know if a woman curses her father? If a daughter curses her father, Talmud Leimer or Mekal aviv ima, and here it doesn't say ish. Stam bein ish bein isha. Imkein lama nemer ish asher yikalel. Oh, it's telling us only an adult loitzias a cotton to exclude a minor. Now here for cursing mois yumas, and here Rashi says beskila, because elsewhere it says v'kol makom shenemar dam of bay, his blood is in him, beskila obinyan of lekulan, because we learn out be'evan yirgumu aisam demeim bam, with stones we stone them, their blood is upon them. Over Mekal Aviv Imai, and by Mekal Aviv and Imai, it says in Vayikra Damav Bay. So therefore, it's Skila. V'chiyarivan anoshim, when people fight, V'hika ish esrei eyu, and a man hits his friend, be'evan oy be'egrif, with a stone or with a fist, v'lo yamos, and he doesn't die, v'nafal l'mishkav, and he falls into bed. We're going to learn over here that there has to be a payment for medical and for temporary unemployment. V'arei yinsun guvrin v'yimche gvar yaschavre ba'avna oy be'kurmeza v'lo yamos v'yipol levutlan, says Rashi, v'chiyarivan nashim lama nemar. What do we need this extra pasuk for? Lefi shenemar ayin tachas ayin, an eye for an eye. They have to pay the value of the eye. Loila manu ela demei varav. You have to pay for the lost limb. Aval sheves v'ripoy, temporary unemployment and medical, loila manu. L'chein nemar parshazu, because in the next pasuk it's going to tell us. It's going to tell us about unemployment and medical. V'nafal l'mishkav, and he falls into bed. Ketargumai v'yipol levutlan. V'yipol levutlan, and he falls to unemployment, l'chayli, sickness, shemavatli memalachli, which causes him not to be able to do anything. So the pasuk says, im yokem, if he gets up, v'yisalech b'chutz al mishtantoi, if he gets up and walks outside on his own steam, so now he's exempt from murder, because here the person obviously showed he recovered. V'nika amaka, he is exonerated from the death sentence. Rak shifta yitein, he has to pay unemployment. V'rapo yurape, and medical. Says the Targum, im yukum yisalach b'bora al burye v'yizaka machya l'choyd butlane yitain v'ager asyel yishalem. Says Rashi, al mishantoy al burye v'koychoy, under his own health and strength. V'nika amaka. So the Gemara says, what do you think, we would execute him if he doesn't die? That we will execute him if he doesn't die. We learn out that if he gave him a blow that might be murderous, in other words, if he gave him a blow that the person might die from, that might be murderous, that we put him in a jail, we incarcerate him. We incarcerate him until the one who he hit gets better. And so does it imply when he gets up and walks on his own steam, then we free him. We don't free him, rather we incarcerate him. Rak shiftai. Now here, this is interesting. What do you mean unemployment? You already, if his arm was cut off, you already paid for the fact that he can't be a pitcher for the New York Mets, because you already paid and gave him the value of his arm. So what more do you pay? The answer is, even after he gets better, he's going to be able to do something. He's going to be able to be a cucumber watchman. And now that he's sick, he can't even be a cucumber watchman. So you pay him for the fact that now he can't be a cucumber watchman. Bittul malachtay machmasachayli, the fact that he can't do work because of his sickness. Im kitei ayoday araglay, if you cut off his hand or his foot, royim bittul malachtay machmasachayli, we look at the unemployment now, ki'ilu shaymer kishuin, as if he's a cucumber watchman, which he could do even without the hand. Obviously, you don't have to pay him for the fact that he can't pitch for the New York Yankees, because he already paid the value of his hand or his foot. Yad tachas yad or regel tachas regel. V'rapo yirape, and you also pay to heal him. This is Ketarguma Yishalem Schar Areife, you pay the medical bills. The pasuk continues, V'chiyake ish es avdoi oi es amosai. If a man hits his servant or maidservant, this means an Eved Kanani or a Shifcha Kananis, Bashevet with a stick, or meis tachas yadai, and the Eved or the Shifcha dies, nakam yanakim. You should surely take vengeance. In other words, the master is put to death. V'arei yimche gvar yas abdei o yas amsei v'shultan v'mustchos yodei is dana yis done. Says Rashi, the chiyaki ishes abdei yas amasei. Now here, don't think it's talking about an Eved Ivri. Be'Eved Kanani yakas medaber. O yein ela be'Ivri. Maybe it's talking about only a Hebrew slave. Talmud Leimer ki kaspayu. The pasuk says it's his money, and of course, an Ivri is not his money. Ma kaspay kani lo'ilam is just like his money is acquired to him forever, unlike an Eved Ivri that goes free after 6 years. Af Eved akani lo'ilam is harihoya b'chlal. Now, an Eved would be included in Maka Ish V'Meis. Excuse me. It should be included if you hit a man and he dies. However, the pasuk over here tells us a chiddush that if he walks around for 24 hours, even if he dies after 24 hours, since it's his money, he's potter. That's a din that's unique by an Eved. It makes it an exception to be judged b'din yoyma yamayim. That if he walks around for a day or two, she'im loy meis tachas yada, if he doesn't die immediately, v'shah meis leis, and he waits 24 hours, potter. B'shavit, now it means that there was in the blow enough to kill him. Kishiyesh boy kedei lahamis hakosim medaber. Where there was enough, it was a murderous blow. Maybe you're chayiv even if you didn't give him a murderous blow. If with a stone that he could die from, he hits him. Yid, who's more chamer, he has all the mitzvahs. It's only if you hit him with a blow that could kill him, and on a vital organ where such a hit will kill him, Eved Akal, an Eved that doesn't have all the mitzvahs, like Kolshkein, it's only with a blow that will be able to kill him. Nokam Yenokim, Misa Saif, that's beheading. The sword that vengeance the vengeance of the covenant. So we see that that's the death of Saif. The pasuk says, Im yoim o yamayim yamoid, if he stands for a day or two, and Rashi's going to ask if you're potter ready when he stands for a day. Of course you're potter if he stands for 2 days, but if he is able to stand for a day or two, lo you come, then he's not put to death. Kikas bayu, for it is his money. Bram im yomo trei yomin yiskayim lo yisdan arei kasbehu, says Rashi. Akim yomo yamayim yamad lo yukam. So the Rashi asks if he is okay for 1 day, he's already exempt. Why does it have to say 2 days? Im al yoim echad upater al yamayim lo kol shrein. Surely 2 days. It means it doesn't mean if he lives until Shkia or until Tzeitzah Kechavim. It means 24 hours, which stretches sometimes from 1 day into the second day. He has to live for 24 hours. Lo yukam, then he's not put to death. Ki kasbayhu ha'achar shikeyu. But if somebody else hit the Eved Kanani or the Shifcha Kananas, he doesn't get this dispensation. Only the owner. Even if he was okay for 24 hours and then died, still chayiv, still he gets the death sentence. Now we have a selection from Yirmiyah, which will become more clear later on in future choks. But here the Yirmiyah tells us, Hadavar asher hoyel Yirmiyahu me'es Hashem. This matter was given to Yirmiyahu from Hashem b'mei Yoyakim ben Yoshio melech Yehuda Lamer, in the days of Yoyakim the son of Yeshua, king of Yehuda, saying, Haloich al beis haRechavim, go to the house of Rechavim. This was from the family of Yisro. V'dibarta isam, speak to them, Ravi osam beis Hashem, and bring them to the house of Hashem, el achas halishachos, to one of the chambers. You're going to test them to see if they would drink wine. V'yishkisa oisam yoyin, and offer them wine. V'akach, you should take es Yazniya ben Yirmiyahu ben Chabatzinya. You should take Yazniya ben Yirmiyahu, son of Chabatzinya, ve'es Echov and his brothers, ve'es Kol Banav, all his children, ve'es Kol Beis HaRechavim, and the house of the Rechavim. V'oviyoi some Beis Hashem, bring them to the house of Hashem, Elishkas b'nei Chanan ben Yigdaliyo, Isho Elikim, to the chamber of b'nei Chanan, the son of Yigdaliyo, a man of God, Asher Eitzel Lishkas Hasam, which is near the chamber of the officers, Asher Mimal, which is above Lelishkas Maiseyo ben Shalom, the chamber of Maiseyo ben Shalom, who was Shemer Asaf, was in charge of the Klei Sharis, of the ministering vessels. Vo'etein lefnei b'nei Beis HaRechavim, and put before the house of Rechavim, Geviyim Malayim Yayin, pitchers full of fine wine, bekases and cups to drink, v'omer aleim shsu yayin, and test them to see if they would drink wine. V'yaymu, and they said, Lo nishte yayin, we won't drink wine, ki Yonadav ben Rechav Avinu, for Yonadav, the son of Rechav, our father, tziva aleinu leimar, instructed us, like sishtu yayin, you should not drink wine, atem uvenechem, you and your children, ad olam, so that you shouldn't be tempted to lose your mind and get intoxicated and not make the wrong choices. We'll see more about this in the next Chok. And now we learn from the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech first tells us to be weary of pride. Lifnei shever goin, before being broken is arrogance. A person that's arrogant thinks that he doesn't need to be careful, and he doesn't need to take advice, and that leads to being smashed. V'lifnei shalom, and before one stumbles, geiva ruach, there is usually haughtiness. Toiv shval ruach es anovim, better is one who has a lowly spirit and stays with the humble, because we said that it says lifnei kavod, before honor is anava, is humility. Better is one who is lowly spirit with the humble, may chalek shalol, than one who divides the spoils as geim and hangs around the arrogant. Maskil al davar, one who thinks about a matter and weighs a matter carefully, yimtza toiv, if he weighs a matter carefully before he does it, will find a good result. Uvaiteach b'Hashem, and one who trusts in Hashem and decides to do the right thing, even though it might cost him money, ashrav, he will find that people will honor him. Lachacham leiv, to one who is wise in heart, yikarei noven, one who is wise at heart and listens to his rebbeim and learns from his teachers, will be called an understanding person. Umesek svasayim, and the sweetness of his lips, Yosef lekach, will add to his merchandise, will add to his learning. Because when we say something with our lips, we remember it better. And when we say something to our students and they ask, they make us wiser. Mikar Chaim, a source of life, is Seichel Ba'olav, is the intellect of its owner. Umusar Evilim, and the suffering of the fool comes from Ivelis, his foolishness. Leiv Chacham, the heart of the wise, Yaskil Pihu, makes his mouth intelligence. Because if a person thinks before he speaks, then his mouth will be intelligence. Va'al Svasav, and that which is upon his lips, Yosef Lekach, increases his merchandise, increases his learning, because as we said, when a person says something, it says about learning, Ki chayim heim lemotzeim. There is life to those that pronounce the Torah, that say it out loud, because when we say it out loud, it makes us remember it. And now, our adventure for today is the 8th parak of Mesechtes Bava Metzia. Before we learn the next Mishnah, I just want to familiarize you with the halach of Moide b'miksas yeshava. That means if you admit to part of a claim, then you have to swear. So here, what happened over here is as follows. Hashoyel es hapara. First, we're going to talk about the din of that even though we learned that a shoyel is chayiv and einsim, but if the owner works with you and you use the service of the owner at the time that you borrowed the item, and there's an einus yapater. So over here, Ashoyel es hapara, if I borrowed a cow from Dr. Block, Vishal ba'aleha ima, and at the time that I borrowed the cow, Dr. Block agreed to work with me as well, without charge. Or when I borrowed the cow, I hired Dr. Block with it. Sholes abalim, oiskoren la'achar, says Gemara, or sholes abalim, or I had Dr. Block in my service, he agreed to work for me, oiskoren, or I hired him, and then I borrowed from the cow. So in all three of these cases, he was working for me at the time that I borrowed the cow. V'meisa, and the cow died. That's a special pasuk that potter. I'm potter. Shnema in ba'olav imai. If the owner was with the cow, lo yishalim, then I don't have to pay. But that's only if Dr. Block was working for me at the time that I borrowed the cow. Aval sholes hapara, if I borrowed the cow first, and then v'achakach sholes habalim, and then 6 hours later, Dr. Block agreed to work with me, or I hired him, v'meisa, and the cow died, chayiv, because he wasn't with me at the time that I borrowed the cow. Shenamar ba'olav einimai, if the owner was not with him at the time of borrowing the cow, then shalom yishalom, then I have to pay. Now, Hashoyel es hapara, if I borrow a cow, sha'ala chatzi hayom, I borrow it for the morning, uskara chatzi hayom, and I rent it for the afternoon, or shal hayom, or I borrowed it for Monday, uskara l'macher, and I rented it for Tuesday, or sachar achas, I rented one cow, v'shal achas, and I borrowed one cow, v'meisa, and the cow died. So of course, Hamashalayim, Dr. Block, the lender, says, she'ula mesa, the one that you borrowed died, and therefore you have to pay me. B'yom shoysa shula mesa, it was on Monday when you borrowed it, or b'shah shoysa shula mesa, or it was in the morning when you borrowed it. V'alayim, and I say, eini yodeya, I don't know. Now here it's talking about that there's another animal that he gave me, and that animal died. So for that animal I have to pay. And on done one I said I don't know. So I'm a moide b'miksas. And since I'm a moide b'miksas and I can't swear because I say I don't know, so therefore chayiv. Then I'm chayiv. Hasaycher Aimer, the renter says, Schura Mesa. The renter says that it was the one that I rented that died. B'yom shoysa Schura Mesa. On the day that I rented it, Tuesday, it died. B'shah shoysa Schura Mesa. In the afternoon, it died. Now here, Dr. Block says, I don't know. So Dr. Block is the toyin. And since he doesn't know, so since he doesn't know, there's no shvuah over here, because he can't demand a shvuah when he says he doesn't know, so then potter, then I'm potter. If if I say, excuse me, Zah Meshula, Dr. Black says, for sure, it's the one that was borrowed. V'zeh Skura, and I say, no, for sure, it's the one that was rented. Now remember, there was another one that I admitted that I borrowed and I had to pay for. But here I say, this one definitely was rented, and therefore I'm potter. So I have to swear, but since I'm definite, I could swear. So Yeshava Asoicher Sheskura, I swear that I rented it, Sheskura Mesa, and then I'm potter. What about if we both say, I don't know, Dr. Black says, I don't know whether it was the one that you borrowed or the one that you rented. And I say, I don't know either. So then the Mishnah is going like Sumchus, who holds Mammon Amuta B'Safik, money that's in the Safik, Yachloiku, has to be divided. Now, Hashayel Esapara, if let's say I borrow from Dr. Black a cow, and in the next 6 cases, Dr. Black decides to send it. Since he decides to send it, it's not in my reshus until I get it. So therefore, if I'm borrowing a cow, v'shilchalai, and he sends it to me, biyad benai, with his son, biyad avdai, with his servant, biyad shlucho, with his messenger, or even biyad benai, with my son, biyad avdai, with my servant, biyad shlucho shel shayel, or my agent, v'meisa, but since it's Dr. Black that's doing it, it's still considered that it's in his premises until I receive it. And therefore, if it dies on the way, potter, I'm potter. However, if I instigated the 6 cases, Amalei Ashayel, I, the borrower, says, Shilchali biyad b'ni, send it to me with my son, biyad avdi, with my servant, biyad shluchi, with my agent, or biyad bincha, with your son, biyad avdcha, your servant, biyad shluchacha, with your agent, since I'm the one that said it. Or even, Oisha Amalei Amashal, if Dr. Black, the lender, says, Hareini Mishalchalacha, I'm sending it to you, biyad b'ni, with my son, biyad avdi, my servant, biyad shluchi, my agent, or biyad bincha, with your son, biyad avcha, with your servant, biyad shluchacha, with your agent, but I approve it. V'amalei Ashayel Shalach, or once I approve it, it's like it's already in my premises. V'shilcha v'meis, and Dr. Black sends it and it dies, chayiv. And so is the reverse. V'chein b'shoshem arzira, when I return it. So if I return it with something that Dr. Black sends, so once I give it, I'm off the hook. If I return it with something that I send, then I'm still responsible until it gets to Dr. Black. And even if I send it with something that I send, but Dr. Black says send it, so then I'm already off the hook. Now, interesting case. Barter. Hamaklif para b'chamar. What we do is I barter a cow for a donkey. And the cow gives birth. V'yolda. And of course, I say it gave birth before the barter took place. And he says it gave birth after the barter took place. V'chein amoicher shivkasa v'yolda. I sell him a maidservant and it gives birth. Zaimer, I say, it gave birth before, she gave birth before I sold it, and therefore the child is mine. And Dr. Black says, no, she gave birth only after I bought it. Yachloiku, since it's Mammon Amuta, we divide it. Now, if there were 2 servants, Echad Gadol ve'Echad Katan, one was a big one was a small one. V'chein shtei sada, so 2 fields. Achas gedayla v'achas katan. One was big, one was small. Halikeach, Dr. Black, of course, says, Gadol lakachti. I bought the big field. I bought the big Evid. And I say, no way. V'la eimer eini yodea. And I say, I don't know. So over here again, it's talking about a case where I have to swear an oath, because it's parallels what we had earlier, in that in that I agree that I have to give him something, that I have to give him a field, right? But I'm claiming it's the small field, so I might have b'mixes. So when I might have b'mixes, I have to swear. And since I can't swear, because I say I don't know, so therefore, if you can't swear, you have to pay. So Zacha Bagadol, so Dr. Block gets the big field or the big slave. HaMoicher Eimer, but if the seller says, I say, cotton macharti, I say, I'm sure I sold you the small field, the small eved. And Dr. Black says, I don't know. So then, over there, since he can't claim the big one, ein lo yela cotton, he only gets the small one. Zaymer gadol v'zaymer cotton, in a case where I say it was the big one, and Dr. Block says it was the small one. So over there, since I know, so I could swear. I might have been mixes, so I could swear that it was only the small one, and then only give him the small one. Yeshava amaycher shakot macher, and I only have to give him the small one. If we both don't know, we both don't know whether it was the big one or the small one. We both don't know, so then that's going according to Sumchus, Maman Amuk to Besafik, Chalkin, Yachloika, we divide. Now here's an interesting case. Hamoicher Zeisav L'Eitzim. If let's say I sell to Yitzi my olive tree for the wood. I don't sell him the whole tree, but to cut down the wood. However, he doesn't buy it right away. And in the meantime, the olive tree grows olives. V'asul pachis mervias l'sa, if it's only a negligible amount, that it produces less than a quarter of a lug of oil for every sa, so then that it's relinquished to Yitzi. Harielu shel bal, the other way around, it's relinquished to Yitzi. It goes to the one that bought the olive wood. However, if it produced more than that, also revius l'sa, if it produced olives which are enough to produce a quarter of a kab of oil to a sa, ze oimer, Yitzi says, zeisi gidlu, it's mine olive wood that produced it, v'zaimer artzi gidla, and I said, no, it comes from my land, yachloika, we divide it. Here's an interesting case. Shotaf nor zeisav. I have olive trees, and the water swept the olive trees. There was a flash flood, and it swept the olive trees into Nachman's property. And it took root in Nachman's property. On the son of it took it into Nachman's property, and it took root, and it grew olives. Zaimer zeisi gidlo, I say it grew from my olive trees. V'zaimer artzi gidlo, and Nachman says my land caused it to grow. Yachloika, we divide it. After 3 years, it goes all to Nachman. Now, the rest of the parak talks about renting houses. Hamasker bayis l'chaveroi. If I rent to Yitzi a house, so b'yemaisa geshamim, in the winter, there's no lease. So I can't send them out of the house from Sukkot to Pesach when it's very hard to find another house. If I want to be able to send them out in the winter, then in the summer I have to give them shloshim yom. I have to give them at least 30 days notice before the winter. However, that's only in the small towns, but in the big city where it's very hard to find a rental, whether it's in the summer or the winter, you have to give a person an advance of a year. in a store, whether it's in a small city or the big town, since people sell with credit, and if you're going to have to move away, the customers won't know where to find you to pay, you always have to give advance. Shnei Masach Chaydish. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, Chanuz shel Nachtaimim, a bakery, v'shel tzabam, or of dyers, since they give long-term credit, you have to give an advance of 3 years. You have to give an advance of 3 years. When I rent a house to Yitzi, Hamaskir Chayev Badelis, I have to provide him with a door. Baneger, I have to provide the bolt that he could close it from the inside. Ubamanel, a lock to close it from the outside. Ubachol davar shemaisa umo, anything of a professional need, like windows. Aval davar she'ena maisa umo, something that's not professional. In those days, with flat roofs, the owner would have to plaster the roof often. That Yitzi has to do. Haseicher, I say. Now, if there's a courtyard, I didn't rent him the courtyard, I only allow him to go in and out. So, Hazevel shel balabais, if animals come and leave manure in the field, in the courtyard, which is good for fertilizer, that belongs to me. That goes to the balabais, to the owner. The ein la seicher, in the courtyard is a stove or a double stove, which of course Yitzi has permission to use. So if people come and use it and there's ash there, Yitzi gets to keep the ash. The residue of the oven and the double stove, they used ash for different things in those days. If I rent the house to Yitzi for a year, and then they make a leap year, he gets the extra month. He gets to stay there an extra month. He gets the extra month of the leap year. But if he has to pay me by the month, then if they add an extra month, then he has to pay me for the extra month of the leap year. Now, what if we use the double lashon? Yitzi rented a bathhouse, making up that'll pay me 12 golden coins for the year, a dinner zav for the month. And an extra month was added. Now here it says a yearly price and a monthly price. This incident came before Reb Shimon Gamliel and Reb Yaisi. Since we use both languages, then Yitzi and I have to split the extra month. If I rent to Mark a house and it collapses, so I have to make him another house. I have to provide him with another house. If it was a small house, Mark doesn't want to have to pay extra heating bills. He doesn't want to need more furniture. Lo yasena gadol, I can't give him a replacement, the big one. Gadol, if it was a big one, so he could have room for his grandchildren. Lo yasena cotton, I can't give him a small one. Echad, if it had one room, Mark likes it cozy. Lo yasenu shnaim, I can't give him with 2 rooms. Shnaim, if it has 2 rooms, lo yasenu echad, I can't give him one with 1 room. Lo yifchais me'achalonis, I can't give him less windows. Mark likes his sunlight. Or v'lo yosef aleim, I can't give him with more windows. He likes his privacy. Elamidash shneim, unless we both agree to the change. Now we'll learn the Gemara from Mesechus Bava Metzia, a very interesting piece of Gemara. The Gemara tells us, Amar Reb Shmuel ben Achmeni, Amar Reb Yonasan, Kol hamalamed es ben chaveroi Torah, if you teach your friend's son Torah, Zoicha b'yoshev b'yeshiva shamayim, you will merit to be in the yeshiva in heaven after 120. Shenemar im toshuv, if you cause someone to come back by teaching them the Torah, ve'eshivka, I will cause you to return, la'asid lamai, and lefanai tamid, you will stand before me. V'kol hamalamed es ben ha'aretz Torah, mamish saving him from being an ignoramus. Afilu HaKadosh Baruch Hu geyser gezeira, even if Hashem makes decrees, bevatla b'shviloi. For such a Rebbe, Hashem cancels decrees because of what he says. Shenem avim toitzi yokar mizayle. If you produce something precious out of something that is waste, in other words, you produce a precious person from a Ama Oretz, kefi siyah, you will be like my mouth. You could be mavatal my own gezeiros. Amar Reb Parnach, Amar Reb Yochanan, kol shu Talmid Chacham, or b'nai Talmid Chacham. If you're a Talmid Chacham, your son is a Talmid Chacham, or ben b'nai Talmid Chacham, and your grandson is a Talmid Chacham, shuv ein Torah peisekes mizar eloilam. Then you could be assured that Torah will not cease from your descendants. Shenemar, vani zois brisi, this is my covenant, lo yamusha mepicha, it will not turn from your mouth, and mepi zaracha, and from your children, or mepi zera zaracha, and your grandchildren, Amar Hashem me'atov ad olam, from now and forever. Now what does it mean forever? My Amar Hashem, what does it mean that Hashem makes that announcement? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ani orev lecha b'davar hazeh, I will guarantee it, that the Torah will always be mazer l'achsanya shalah. Mikan ve'elach, my me'atav ad olam, what does it mean forever? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, mikan ve'elach, if there's 3 generations of Torah, Torah machzeres al achsanya shalah. The Torah will always return back to its host. Rav Yosef Arbon Tanisa, Yosef fasted 40 fasts, v'akriyua, and then they told him in a dream, lo yamusha mepicha, the Torah won't move from your mouth. Yosef Arbon Tanisa achrine, he fasted another 40 days, v'akriyua lo yamusha mepicha mipi zaracha, it won't be even from your children. Yosef Ma'ot Tanisa achrine, he fasted another 100 fasts, because already grandchildren live in a different world than him. It needs extra fasting. It won't move from your children, your grandchildren, and your children, your grandchildren. Amar, he said, I don't have to daven anymore. I don't have to fast anymore. The Torah will always return to its host. Amar Rav Chama, my dichsiv, I made a bracha already. Amar Rav Chama, my dichsiv, believe novain, in the heart of one who is understanding, Tonuach Chachma, wisdom rests, ubekerev kisilim, in the midst of a fool, Tivadeya, he will become known. This means, believe novain Tonuach Chachma, in the heart of the understanding will rest wisdom. That means not everybody will know about it. Zet Talmid Chacham ben Talmid Chacham. Because it's not a big surprise that a Talmid Chacham has a son that's a Talmid Chacham. So not everybody is aware. However, Bekerev Ksilim Tivadeya. But if a fool produces a wise person, then that's known. Zet Talmid Chacham ben Ama Aretz, because that gets attention. Amar Ula Hainu da Amra Yinshi, that's what a person says. Istira Belagina, a coin that rattles in an empty pitcher, kish karya, makes a lot of knocking, it makes a lot of noise. Amalei Rabbi Zaira, Rabbi Yirmiyah says to Rabbi Zaira, my dechsiv, what is that which is written? Kotan Vigadol Shamhu, in the next world there will be those that are small and those that are big. The Eved Chafshi Me'adainav, and a servant will be free from his master. Don't we know that in the next world there'll be some small people, some big people? Atuli Yadinan the cotton v'gadol shamu. Ella kol hamaktin atzmai al divrei Torah ba'olam hazeh. Whoever humbles himself for Torah in this world, and he admits that he doesn't know, and he asks questions, Nasa gadol olam haba, will be great in the next world. And whoever makes himself like a slave, toiling on Torah in this world, Nasa Chavshi, will be a free man, a noble, in the next world. Now we have a very interesting Zayar. Zakoyin Inun Yisrael, Fortunate are the Jews, mikol amin avodah avodah zarah, from all the nations, the idolaters. The Moreyan Kori Alayu, their master Hashem, says about us Jews, Uvechah Bachar Hashem, and in you Hashem chooses Liyos Leila Am Segula, to be for him a treasured nation. Uksiv ki Am Kodesh Atol Hashem Elikecha, you are a nation that's holy to Hashem your God. Uksiv Bonim Atem La Hashem Elikechem, your children to Hashem your God. Tochazi, come and see. B'shata the Yisrael lo yiskasharu ovadayu. When Klal Yisrael does not behave properly, Maksiv, what does it say? Ami noigsav ma'oilel. My nation, the oppressors, they are oppressed from cynics, from leitzanim. V'noshim, and those that they owe money to Mashluvai, will rule over him. Now the Zohar says Mashluvai will rule over him daika. That means, as the Bir HaZohar explains, that what will rule over him, as the Zohar, the Bir HaZohar says, in Kabbalistic terms, Val Pi Side, through secret hakavana, shenimsarim takas haklipais. The person will be delivered under the klipais, the shells, which represent not the essence. And mashlu boy means that the chitzainim, the outer influences, will be sholtim aleim, will hold sway over him. V'akimna, and this is established milei, these details, Beraza the Sifra de Shlomo Malka, in the secrets of the book of Shlomo the king, V'achi Ashkechan Bey, and that we find that there. Su Ashkechan, and now we're going to see how detrimental it is, not only to the body, but to the spirit, to eat basa b'challah, to eat meat and milk. Su Ashkechan, the koman the ochel hay mechla is chaber kechada. Whoever eats the food together as one, meat and milk, oy b'shat echada, or in the same hour, oy b'sudas echada, or in the same meal, arbon yoimin is chazya gadya mikulsa b'kilpoi, b'klipoi. The Samach Mem, Samuel, appears as a helmeted goat with his weapons and all of the klipos that surround him. And it appears legabe inon de la'ela, it appears by the pamalia shomaila above. It makes a ruckus above. Visyata misava, and the Samach Mem, as this goat, together with his contaminated colleagues, miskorvin badei, come close to him for 40 days, vigorim lis ora dinin ba'alma, and cause judgment in the world, dinin de lo kadishim, judgment that doesn't come from a side of sanctity to correct the world, but rather from the sitra achra, from the side of tumah. And it would be very bad if this person who eats the basar chalav gives birth at that time. V'i olid bar be'inon yoimin, if he has a child during these 40 days, oisven le nishmasa, he gets a soul mesitra achra from the other side, deloyet stricha, that wasn't supposed to be. It's rather because of his sin. Uksiv, the pasuk tells us about kashrus. V'skadishtem, if you sanctify yourself, then v'yisem kedoshim, then they will sanctify you above. Asay listava, but if one comes to contaminate himself, misaven levadai, they surely contaminate him. Dechsiv v'nitmeisem bam. Now this is interesting. If it would say v'nitmeisem with an aleph, it means that he would be defiled. But without the aleph, it also means that he becomes clogged. Timtum alev. Chaser aleph misoavusa atima mikula. This contamination causes the biggest blockage. The less rishula is takahachi. He can't purify himself by simply going to the mikvah. Keshar zine de misavusa de mistakim. Like other tumah that you could purify yourself by going to the mikvah. The only way is to do tshuva. V'su, and furthermore, one who eats basa v'chalav has to be afraid of animals because he appears like a goat. And the animals don't have the normal fear that usually they have for a human. It says, "Morakam v'chitchem yiyal kol chayes haaretz." But the mistafe mechevan bishin, he has to be afraid of animals. Da be'inayu, because he appears to them gadye ishtach, he appears to them as a goat. V'yachal atzaka, and they could damage him. Da tzalma de barnosh is avamina, he lost the appearance of a human because of his eating the basa b'chalav. Very interesting. Rabbi Yossi asked, what about poultry with milk? What about chicken? This is beef. What about chicken? Rabbi Yossi shal, ishari l'meichel l'tarnagoyla b'gvinoi b'chalava. Is it permitted to have chicken with cheese or with milk? Rab Shimon asalach. It's forbidden. Why? Delo yav inish pischa l'zinim bishin. We don't want to give an opening for bad behavior. If you come to have chicken, you might come to have meat. Leich amrin nazira. We tell the nazir, go, schor, go round, the camel takri. Don't come near the vineyard. Although there's no problem with a nazir being in the vineyard, he just has to make sure not to drink the wine. Vadei asalachu, and therefore it's forbidden to have chicken. The chumra isbei kibeira l'shchita, because chicken has it's not like fish, because on a bird, there's like an animal shchita, and if you come to eat one, you might eat the other. Omanda shori hai, one who permits it, moksiv, vatashku es nazirim yayin. It's like giving the nazirim to drink wine, just like he has to avoid going to the vineyard, you have to avoid eating chicken. Manda shori hai, commanda shori hai, one that permits one will come to permit the other. Uksiv, and there's a remes to this, it says, Lo soichal kol toyeva, you shouldn't eat any abomination, so not just basa b'chalav, kol achlola koila, to include even poultry with milk. And now, we learn the musar, Imin hashemayim siyucha, remember, Mishpotim is in the days of Shovavim, Shmois ve'era b'ay b'shach Yisrei Mishpotim, where we do tshuva for the sin of the youth, of wasting seed. That's why the Musar is focused so much on it. Imin hashemayim sayucha, if from heaven they help you, levakesh refuas, to ask for a cure, to ola lamachalisecha, a remedy for the sickness, besamra ovan begama bris, with the bitter sin of the blemish of the bris kodesh, pekakei necha re'eh, open your eyes and see. Kisachas asher hirbeis pesha, instead of that which you increased, pesha, rebellion, sin, with wasting seed, beyilde pesha zera sheker, connected to in the phrase with the giving of birth of pesha through false zera. Toiv asher tekos, remember pesha, patient ayin, if you switch around pesha, you get shefa, an outpouring of good. So toiv asher tekos shefa, you should grab hold of the midah of shefa, of outpouring of good, tachas pesha, instead of pesha, ubezet tarba shefa, and with this you will increase Hashem's blessing, ki'im tama ketzef, if the anger ends with your not wasting seed, v'over al pesha, and you pass over the pesha, and pesha, to correct pesha, the Rosh Tevis Peshin Ayin stand for three good traits. Vu Rosh Tevis Pesha Pizer, to scatter your money to the poor, Shabbos, and Anova, that's Peshin Ayin. V'chodol me'asos hapesha, stop from doing the bad sin. V'yarba hashef, and that will increase the outpouring of good. Now, let's talk first about the pay, which is Pizer. Maskal b'pay Pizer, which is Pizer, scatter your money, nosan lev yoinim, give it to the needy. Tzidkasa, such a person, his righteousness is oimedes la'ad, stays forever. Yarba b'tzedakah kafi kaicha, you should give tzedakah according to your strength every day, yom yom. V'lo yamer yom echad, it shouldn't pass one day, shalo yitain tzedakah, you don't give tzedakah. Ima'at mimharba, I guess even on Shabbos, give a matzah Shabbos. Ima'at mimharba, if a little or a lot. Ki sachas asher hoya b'pishay, that instead of in your sin there's nirgan mafrid aleph, complaining and sin separates you from the chief, from Hashem. Ata b'tzedakah, now it's tzedakah miyached shem havaya baruch hu. You unite the shem havaya. V'utiken gadol, and it's a great correction. Shupizer nitzaitis hakadusha. By giving tzedakah, you spread sparks of kedusha b'mekayim hasitra acha, instead of the other side, darga demoisa, the level of death. Ata yefazer mamayna, you should scatter your money lahachiyos nafshes ebyainim, to give life to the souls of the needy. And now he tells us a great gematria. Habeit re'eh, see that kesef Chav Samach Pei, spelled in full, in Gematria Malay, like this. B'milui Kaf is Chav Pei, Samach is Samach Mem Chav, and Pei is Pei Hey, that equals 305, and it's Gematria Kapara, which is also 305. Umiyachid HaShchina, and that unites the Shchina, V'yir Ba'ashefa, and promotes the outpouring of blessing from Hashem. And finally, the Rambam says, in Hilchas Kriya Shema, Mishi Yarad Litval, if in the morning you went to the mikveh, if you could get up and cover yourself and say Kriya Shema Kaidim Shetanei Tzachama before sunrise, Yalav Yiskasa V'yikra. You should get up, get dressed, and say it. If he's afraid that it might be sunrise and he wants to say Kriya Shema before sunrise, Yiskasa b'mayim shu oimid b'hem, he should cover himself in the water inside the mikveh. We'll see it's unclear water, so he could cover himself with the unclear water, v'yikra, and say Kriya Shema in the water. However, lo yiskasa lo b'mayim aroin shireichem ra, but if he's in water that smells foul, he can't say Kriya Shema, v'lo b'mei hamishra, not in water that flax is steeped in, v'lo b'mayim tzlulin mipnei, and not in clear water, because then his nakedness is seen. But he could do it, aval miskasu, he could cover himself b'mayim achurim, with unclear water, with muddied water, she'ein reichen ra, which is not foul, v'kayr b'mekayim, and he says Kriya Shema there. Hakar Kriya Shema, while saying Kriya Shema, lo yirmois be'einav, he shouldn't wink with his eyes, v'lo yikrates b'svasav, nor should he make mouth with his mouth without saying the words. V'lo yerah be'etzvaisav, he shouldn't make show with his fingers. Kidei shelo tia kriyasei aroi, it shouldn't look like he's not concentrating on his Kriya Shema. V'im asakain, if he does wink, etc., afal pishe yatsi yedei chayvasa, even though he fulfills his requirement, harizeh meguna, it's something ugly. He should hear what he says when he's saying Kriya Shema, but if it's not audible, still yatsa, still he fulfills his requirement. He should be careful to say the words. Now this means that, for example, when saying al levavacha, where you have a word that ends with the same letter that the next word starts, you should pause. You shouldn't read it together, alavavcha, saying it as one lamed. However, vim loy diktek, if you're not careful, still yotza, you still fulfill your requirement. I want to thank you very much for joining us and wish you a wonderful day.